Hello and welcome to the channel. As always, like the video, and if you enjoyed the story, leave a comment on if you would want more. This fan fiction was not created by me, but in the description there is a link to the fanfic so you can show your support to the creator and read along. Without any more delay, let's dive into the story.
It had been quite a long time since Rigret Bear's Karau had stepped foot inside this building. She took in the sights of all the gold, weapons, armor, and equipment that lay strewn about the place. It didn't look any different than the last time she had come here, save for one thing. The armor that accompanied her here last time was now in a little alcove off to the side of the treasury. It was no longer animated with life, and hadn't been in quite some time. That didn't mean the person, well, it wasn't really a person, who occupied that armor wasn't still here with her. She had taken in the sleeping form of the Platinum Dragon Lord, but she wasn't fooled. She knew that the dragon wasn't sleeping. She may be known for being playful and mischievous, but she was one of the few that knew the Platinum Dragon Lord was probably even more so than she was. Rigret wouldn't allow the PDL to get the drop on her with one of his jokes, so she made a jape of her own before he could do whatever he was going to. I came here on a summons by my friend, but all I find is a lazy, sleeping dragon. I suppose I should just head on back home then. Rigret knew the low rumble she heard was the PDL laughing to himself. He stopped pretending to sleep and started to stretch himself out to talk to his old friend. It only took a moment before he said, "I should have known by now I can't fool you any more in your old age, my friend." Rigret feigns a shocked look as she looked to her oldest friend. "Who are you calling old, Dragon Lord? I'm not even 300 yet. I'm still a spring chicken." Both the PDL and Rigret laughed at that. It was like neither had missed a beat being apart all of these years and had just picked up right where they left off. "I did miss you, my friend. I am glad that you have come, and it is good to see you still in such good spirits. I fear we may need them in the not-so-distant future." "I missed you as well, old friend, but I see you want to get right to the heavy stuff. I assume you wish to discuss this new psycho kingdom that has sprung up from nowhere." "I do not believe this psycho kingdom sprung up from nowhere, my friend. Or, at least not the beings who run it." "Are you saying?" "Yes, I believe they are from Yggdrasil, but there is something more troubling than that." "What could possibly be more troubling than another evil deity situation?" "The truly troubling part is that I believe these ones are much, much more powerful than the evil deities." "How is that even possible? If the stories are true, the evil deities were more powerful than the 6 great gods." "Tell me, old friend, what do you know about that battle of the Katsa Plains?" Rigret took a moment to collect her thoughts on all the information she had heard about that battle. She had heard plenty of stories about it, but most seemed completely ridiculous. Almost a whole army wiped out with one spell, a 50-foot shadow that killed soldiers by the hundreds, a queen and her maids tearing through a trained army like they were practice dummies. All of it sounded too ridiculous to be even remotely true. Most of the stories I have heard sounded like exaggerated rumors. It was hard to believe any of what I was hearing from people. If the stories were exaggerated, it was probably only slightly. I watched the battle, and the destruction I witnessed was unlike anything I thought possible. The worst parts, though, not only do I believe there are 4 players in this new psycho kingdom, but I believe their king, Ainz alone would have been enough to defeat all of the evil deities. You can't be serious. There can't be a being that strong. The evil deities nearly wiped out the world. I do not say these things lightly, my friend. Many of their servants give off an aura of power on a similar level to their leaders. If my guess is correct, I believe the king, both queens and their daughter, are all players from Yggdrasil. I can't be completely sure since I have only had the opportunity to watch them all that one time, but that is my assumption at this time. You've only talked about a few individuals. I heard they have an army of undead and angels as well. What could we possibly do against a force that powerful? I haven't even mentioned that one of them possesses magic powerful enough to block my ability to spy on them with magic. So, to answer your question, at the moment, there is nothing we could possibly do to stop them if they decided to destroy the world. That is where you come in, though, my friend. I fail to see how this is where I am needed, my friend. I need you to try and find as many things from Yggdrasil as possible. It doesn't matter if it is an item, a fortress like this, even other beings from there, and make sure they fall into our hands. We will need every advantage we could possibly get if this psycho kingdom decides it is tired of playing nice. All right, old friend. I'll do everything I can to aid in our cause. I know I can always count on you, Rigret. Now, it has been too long. Let us catch up for a bit before you go off to save the world again. Rigret chuckles and plops her old bones down on a pile of coins. It had been too long since she had seen her old friend, and they talked for hours. Rigret finally called it a night, intent on setting out first thing in the morning to discover everything she could about Yggdrasil. In the royal palace in the Draconic Kingdom, Queen Draudelin Auriculus sat at the council table wishing she was anywhere but there. All her advisors droned on about this and that. She really had no interest in any of this. If it wasn't for the delicious wine she was currently sipping on, she definitely would have left an hour ago. She didn't even really understand why they were talking about taxes, infrastructure, or businesses. The only focus should be on the damn beast men and their continued invasion of her land. The slain theocracy was dragging their heels on sending their scripture they promised, and it was starting to get to the queen. She should just leave Prime Minister Yura to deal with all this nonsense. She is sure she could be doing something better than this right now. Even if that thing was simply sitting in her own room enjoying the rest of this bottle of wine. Unfortunately for the queen, the prime minister was being exceptionally annoying about getting her attention, so she never got the opportunity to slip away. Your Majesty, here is the report. It took a long time to get it together, but I believe it is accurate enough for an official report. Queen Draudelin didn't even reach for the report. She really didn't see the need, and she honestly had no idea what the prime minister was talking about. The prime minister seemed insistent, though, and slid it right in front of her. She had only read the first couple of sentences before she threw it back on the table. She really didn't see the point of this report. All right, so there is a new kingdom. I fail to see how that is of any importance when we have other things that are much more pressing to worry about, Prime Minister. Please, Your Majesty, you will understand the importance if you will just read the report. Unless they are a threat to my kingdom, it is just a waste of time, Prime Minister. If they turn their sights on your kingdom, Your Majesty, it will be much more troublesome than the beastmen. Also, we are about to be their neighbors, so please, read the report, Your Majesty. Fine ora. Queen Draudelin gave a resigned sigh and started reading. It was quite an extensive report for simply being about a new country. She realized quickly that most of the report was of one battle that took place between this new kingdom, the Baharuth Empire, and the Riestai's kingdom. The more she read, the more ridiculous the report got. She raised an eyebrow quite a few times while reading. When she finally finished and set the report down, she did the first thing that she could think of. She laughed. Surely you could have come up with a better joke, Prime Minister. There is no way any of this is possible. If you were going to try and pull one over on me, you should have thought of a better idea. I assure you, Your Majesty, that nothing in that report is a joke or made up. Sure it isn't, Yura. Your Majesty. Yura looked her right in the eye as seriously as he could. I triple-checked everything I put in that report before I completed it. All of that is true, whether you want to believe it or not. Queen Draudelin realized he was not kidding and sobered up immediately. She was capable of some of the strongest magic this world could comprehend, and she couldn't imagine a spell being so powerful. She would have to sacrifice millions to achieve what this Ainz Olgown had. She reached over for her glass and completely bypassed it. She grabbed the bottle and drained the entire thing in one drink. Trying to comprehend something like this would require more alcohol, and she had just sobered up. She called for another bottle from one of the servants before addressing the council. You say we are about to become neighbors. How? The Baharuth Empire is about. Queen Draudalin took a minute to think about the ramifications of what Prime Minister Yura had told her. Now, she had an idea. It might be a far-fetched one, but it might just save her kingdom if they could work out the details. She turned to the Prime Minister and said, "You are sure this report is accurate, Prime Minister?" "Yes, Your Majesty. I was in disbelief myself at first, which is why I triple-checked everything before presenting the report to you." "All right, this may change things a bit." "What do you mean by that, Your Majesty?" "I believe the Prime Minister in the might of this Ainz Olgown. The slain theocracy has essentially ignored us. Perhaps we should appeal to the Psycho Kingdom to aid us against the Beast Men." "While I agree that having the Psycho Kingdom aid us would help immensely, Your Majesty, I sense a but coming, Prime Minister." "You are correct, Your Majesty. But what could we possibly offer in exchange for their help? The Beast Men have ravaged our country, and we have little to nothing to offer to the Psycho Kingdom. That is why I need all of your help. We must figure out a way to appeal to the Psycho Kingdom." The servant returned with her bottle of wine, but Queen Draudalin waved her off and had her take the bottle. Everyone in the room raised an eyebrow at the Queen sending alcohol away. "Oh, don't give me that look. We have a lot of work to do, so we better get to it." The Queen and her council started to put ideas together immediately. She knew she shouldn't count on the slain theocracy anymore, as they had been ignoring them for too long. It was time to save this country, and they were determined to figure out a way to do that regardless of who the help came from. It had taken nearly 2 weeks to get the cardinals together for this meeting. Some were off in other parts of the country doing their duties, but one that was in the capital had a hard time getting this report together at all. They were here, in their meeting spot under the eyes of the Six, to discuss what had transpired on the Katsa Plains between the Riestai's kingdom, Baharuth Empire, and newly formed Psycho Kingdom. Cardinal Dominic had needed every second it took for the cardinals to assemble to make his report sound even a little bit put together. The 1,000-mile astrologer's mind seemed to have snapped after witnessing the Battle of the Katsa Plains, and he wasn't sure if she would ever be useful again to the slain theocracy. That little revelation couldn't have come at a worse time for them either. Not only did the Psycho Kingdom and its heteromorphic rulers just appear, but their trump card, Zeshi Zetsumii, had simply vanished as well. The only one who might be able to track her down was the 1,000-mile astrologer, but she wasn't able to use any form of magic right now because of her mental state. The slain theocracy was in dire straits now. Zeshi was gone, the 1,000-mile astrologer was useless, half the black scripture was gone, and the entire sunlit scripture was wiped out. They had never been more vulnerable than they were now, and it couldn't have come at a worse time. This meeting had been so dire, they skipped the ritual of cleaning each statue of the Six before beginning the meeting. Cardinal Dominic waited until each other cardinal and the Pontifex Maximus had taken their seats and wasted not a moment longer in beginning the briefing. "I am sure you are all aware of why we are having this emergency meeting. However, there is also something else that has come up recently that needs to be addressed as well. We shall get to that first before discussing this battle." Cardinal Ivan Dracula raises from his seat and lets his opinion be heard. What could possibly be more important than what those heteromorphic monsters did to the Empire and Riestai's kingdom? Considering the recent losses to the sunlit and black scriptures, I suggest you sit back down and listen to what he has to say before raising your voice, Ivan. Cardinal Raymond looked at the Cardinal of Light with narrow eyes. He may be the only other one to know what he was about to say and realize the gravity of it, but interruptions during meetings were something he never liked to begin with. When the matter was this important, he just wanted them to listen for now. There would be plenty of time to discuss later. Cardinal Dominic gave Raymond a nod and continued. What I'm about to tell you will be another devastating blow, and you will soon realize why it needs to be addressed now. We concluded a few days ago that the 13th seed of the Black Scripture, Zeshi Zetsomiai, has left the slain theocracy, and we do not believe she will be returning. All of the cardinals except Raymond erupt in outrage. The Pontifex Maximus turned as pale as snow. All of them realized the implications of this and vented it in their own way. It took quite some time before Cardinal Dominic was able to calm them enough to have a discussion about it. It was Cardinal Berenice who asked, "What makes you so sure she won't return? Perhaps she got wind of a strong opponent and went off to fight it. She could return any day now if that is the case." A reasonable idea, Berenice. However, I know that is not the case. After no one had heard from Zeshi for 3 days, we sent someone down to the sacred treasury to check on her. The only thing the man found down there was a note posted on the door that said, and I quote, "Fuck all of you and your gods." I think it is safe to say, she will not be coming back. That half-breed dares to curse the gods. Cardinal Ivan raises from his seat in anger to speak his mind, but Cardinal Genadine has a much more worrying thought after hearing that. What are the sacred treasures? Zeshi had access to them. Did she loot the entire vault before turning traitor? Nothing is missing from the sacred treasury, Genadine. Cardinal Raymond assures her. I check it myself. There is nothing amiss in there. Not only Cardinal Genadine, but all the cardinals and the Pontifex Maximus let out a sigh of relief hearing Raymond's words. It was already a disaster losing Zeshi. If she would have taken all the sacred treasures, they would be completely defenseless. Cardinal Maximilian had another question. Do we know where she fled to? No, we have no way to track her. And as you will find out when we go over the report of the battle, the 1,000-mile astrologer is in no condition to attempt to track her either. They all get grim looks on their faces at the prospect of what the future holds for the slain theocracy. They couldn't stew for too long, though. There were still things that needed to be discussed. If you read the report in front of you, you will see that the numbers we have for casualties are well beyond what we thought would happen. This can't be accurate. 215,000 total casualties? That has to be some kind of mistake. Everyone nods their heads at the Pontifex Maximus statement. None can truly believe that many people lost their lives at that battle. Cardinal Dominic wishes what he said was false, but he is now confident in these numbers. You can try to make it false all you like. I stand by that number. Not only from the pieces the 1,000-mile astrologer could give me, but every spy we have in the Baharuth Empire and Riestai's kingdoms gave me casualty reports. I stake my name that that number is only off by a couple thousand at the most. How is that even possible? I'll tell you all, but it will sound even more impossible than what we have already discussed. Dominic made eye contact with all present to show his truthfulness before continuing. Almost half of those casualties were from a single spell cast by Ainz Olgaun. It wasn't even a second after he finished that statement that the whole room exploded into disbelief. Cardinal Dominic knew it was coming, but the fear in most of their voices he didn't really see coming. He thought they would disbelieve him at first, but they all seemed to take him at his word, and that made all of them terrified at his admission. Calm down. Dominic yelled to get them settled, then continued after they did. We all know that magic goes well beyond what we can cast in theory, as all of us have had the privilege to read Sir Shauna's personal journals. I believe this Ainz Olgaun is capable of casting such magic, and I believe he used a god-level tier spell to kill all those soldiers. How can you be so sure? Only Flutter Paradine has reached the level of spellcasting that the 6 great gods could use, and neither he nor anyone else has reached beyond Tier 6. Tier 7 and above magic has been nothing but a theory since not even the 6 great gods could use it. All the other cardinals nodded their heads at Cardinal Maximilian's words. None could believe someone could cast such a high tier of magic, and they couldn't believe Dominic knew what Ainz Olgaun cast was god-tier magic. Anything above tier 6 was nothing but theory as far as any of them knew. There is no other possible answer, that is how I can be sure. Even if someone were to reach tier 7, I find it hard to believe there is a spell of that tier capable of killing 100,000 people in a single cast. No, the only explanation is that this Ainz Olgaun can cast what Sir Shauna called god-level magic. If this Ainz Olgaun can cast higher than tier 6, he could have simply used tier 8, 9, or 10 if that is the case. Why are you so positive it was god-level magic? Everyone was interested in Cardinal Dominic's response to Cardinal Raymond's question. They all wondered the same thing, since Cardinal Dominic seems so sure it was god-level magic that Ainz Olgaun used. The way the spell was cast is what brought me to such a conclusion. All spells, no matter what tier, have a magic circle appear before the caster's hand before they unleash their spell. The magic circle, in this case, didn't appear from Ainz Olgaun's hand. It completely encased him in magic runes that swirled around him. They were also doing this for over a minute before the spell cast. There is no spell we know of that doesn't cast almost instantly. The only reason I can come up with to need that long to gather magic power is that the spell was god-level magic. Everyone in the room was sitting there, with their jaws almost on the floor. It was because they believed Cardinal Dominic. None of them could think of a reason you would need a full minute to gather magic power. Even the tier 5 spells some of them and their subordinates could use were instantly cast after the words were said. To need a full minute to gather magic power would mean the spell would be immeasurably powerful compared to even tier 5. And you learned all this from the 1,000-mile astrologer? You said she wasn't in such a good state. How can you know it is true? She can still somewhat carry a conversation, and she is fine talking about leading up to the casting of the spell. The problem comes after the spell is cast. Well, the only way to describe it is she looks absolutely horrified, as if she is experiencing the battle from the victim's perspective. I believe what she witnessed is possibly driving her insane, which is why I have not spoken to her much about the battle. Instead, I relied heavily on our spies for the information. They all gave the same account. The central column of the Riestai's army was killed with a single spell. TT, that is. Cardinal Berenice never got to finish her stuttered, horrified statement at Cardinal Dominic's words as the doors to the meeting room were suddenly thrown open with a tremendous force. Most of the cardinals were on their feet in an instant to judge if it was a threat to everyone in the room. What they saw did not constitute a threat, but everyone now understood Cardinal Dominic's words better now. The 1,000-mile astrologer came into the room, and she looked almost frantic. Her hair was disheveled and matted. Her face was sunken in. Her eyes were red and puffy, as if she had been crying for a long time. To put it bluntly, she looked like a disaster. Call them all back now. She yelled into the room at no one in particular. Everyone was trying to figure out what she meant by those words, but it would be no use. Cardinal Dominic quickly ran to his daughter and tried to calm her down. Lana, what are you talking about? He tried a calm voice to get her to settle a little bit, but it didn't seem to do anything to her frantic state. You need to bring them all home. Who do we need to bring home? Everyone. Lana, what are you talking about? You need to calm down so we can make sense of what you're trying to tell us. Call them all back. Everyone. All the scriptures. All your spies. Everyone. You need to bring them all back so we can leave. Why do we need to leave, Lana? None of you will ever bow to their rule. They will kill us all if you don't. We need to flee now before they come for us. Cardinal Dominic starts to drag Lana out of the room. The girl has clearly lost it, and he wants to get her out of that room as soon as possible. It doesn't stop the Pontifex Maximus from asking, "Who is coming for us?" Lana's head whipped around to him so fast, Cardinal Dominic thought she might have broken her neck. She began struggling even harder as Cardinal Dominic continued to drag her out, but she answered the Pontifex Maximus regardless. The god of death and destruction. He will come for us all. He will turn us into his mindless minions for eternity. Flee. Flee now. Everyone must run for their lives. That was the last any of the cardinals could make out as Cardinal Dominic dragged her out. They could still hear her screams on the other side of the now closed doors, but the words were impossible to make out. Each of them looked around the room, and all of them had matching expressions.
Dread.
There was quite the collection of people in the arena on the 6th floor of Nazarick as Ainz broke out of his trance from the super tier spell he just ended. Ainz, Taylar, Albedo, Yuri, Oriole, and Floody all stood around in silence. There were more people to this party today, but the rest of them were already in the carriages heading toward the Riestai's capital. Everyone had an impassive face save for one at the moment. Flutter Paradigm was crying like a little baby at what he just witnessed. For someone to have such might is unfathomable. Flood had thought he advanced significantly since receiving the tome from his master, but he realized he'd never achieved the level of magic control his master could. His master turned to him. Do you see now the difference between normal tier magic and super tier magic, Flutter? Why, yes, Your Majesty. To think that you could control someone's mind from this far away is absolutely astonishing. That is not what I just did, Flutter. Also, you didn't answer my question. I really wish I could just go back to this morning and that wonderful wake-up from Albedo. Talking to Flutter always puts my nerves on end. What did you? Oh, right. I'm sorry, Master. It didn't look as if you used any magic to cast your super tier spell, Master. You are partially correct, Flutter. I did not use my own MP to cast it. I gathered the magic from the area around me to cast a spell with such power. With that being said, do you have an idea as to why spells of that caliber take time to cast again and can't be cast in rapid succession? I believe it is to give time for the magic in the area to gather once more. Flood said that as a statement and a question. That was all he could glean from his observations, and it seemed right to him. Once again, partially true. The magic does need time to resupply, but you also need to give the caster time to have that magic power dissipate from themselves as well. Are you saying anyone who can use magic has the potential to cast a super tier spell? Flutter looked downright giddy at the prospect, but Ainz quickly shattered those dreams.
No.
You also must have not only the knowledge of such powerful spells, but you must also be able to handle gathering that much magical power. Without both of those, you would probably end up dying a painful death. Flood deflated a little at his words, but perked up again when he realized something from earlier in the conversation. You said you didn't control her mind, Master. How did you make her say your words through her mouth if you weren't controlling her mind? I use this method because mind control isn't always as effective as you like it to be. When you use spells such as that of the normal tier of magic, the orders you relay to the target always have a chance of being resisted. That could result in a twitch of the hand, a stutter in speech, or any number of other signs. Not to mention, mental domination spells can be picked up by casters that are much lower level than the caster who dominated the subject. That is, unless the being is under total mental domination. Such a state is usually only able to be achieved by those that specialize in enchantment or telepathy spells. Illithads and Elithards being the best at such spells and abilities. Do you remember the name of the spell I just used, Flutter? Of course, Master. You called it Soul Dominion. Correct, and as the name alludes to, I did not take dominion over the 1,000-mile astrologer's mind. I took dominion over her soul. I was not inside her head giving her commands. I took possession of her soul, her very essence. There was no need to give her commands for her to resist. I essentially was Lana Partouche for the duration of the spell. It is impossible to pick up with detect magic, so no matter how out of character someone would act in such a state, no one would ever believe them to be under any outside mental influence. What I just did is much closer to possession than it is to mental domination. To think you could dominate someone's soul, and for you to be able to explain it to such a lowly student as me flawlessly, I will be forever grateful that you are my master. Flutter felt his knees and pressed his forehead to the ground as he did often. The man probably spent a third of his time in Ainz's presence in this pose. Ainz waved it off as he always did before saying, "You are a very devoted pupil, Flutter. Not to mention you've increased my understanding of how to manipulate magic in this world far faster than I could have achieved on my own." Ainz, of course, wasn't going to say that to the man. He couldn't very well be seen as the god of magic by him if Flutter learned Ainz was learning things from him about magic as well. Ainz decided to continue to praise him. It was just a ruse to get the man away from him for 2 days, but it would make him much more devoted, which was saying a lot. The man was a fanatical follower already. Thinking of him more devoted was honestly a little terrifying. Also, you are progressing along yourself very well. I believe you are starting to get a grasp of Tier 7 magic. You are accomplishing it much faster than I thought a human could. I have no doubt you will soon be able to comprehend and cast Tier 7 magic. You honor me with such praise, Master. You have earned such praise, Flutter. Now, Ainz motions for the man to stand up and continues once he is on his feet. I have a reward for you. It is for your service to us in the Empire, which has slowed your learning down, and for how much progress you have made in the short time you have had to study. Knowledge of the arcane is all the reward I seek, Master. I shall be grateful for everything I learned from you. I gathered as much. Ainz chuckles. Which is why I have thought of this as your reward. He pulls a ring out of his inventory. I shall lend you this ring for 2 days. During those 2 days, you may read any book in the library of Ashkar you wish. Titus shall get you anything you require while you are there. I'm sure you are wondering where this ring comes into play here. Yes, Master. This is called a ring of sustenance. While it is worn, you will not require sleep, food, or drink. He sees Flutter about to jump for joy. However, the longer you wear it, the longer you will require it to survive. Therefore, after your 2 days are up, you must return the ring, bathe, and eat a meal before you will be returned to the Empire. We will be there for Jerkniv's kneeling not long after you arrive. It will afford you much more time in the library when the Empire is officially our vassal. Thank you, Master. Flutter assumes his favorite pose. I will learn all I can for as long as I can. Ainz gets the maniac to stand, hands him the ring, and opens a gate for him to go through to the library of Ashkar. He turned to the rest of them when the gate closed. None of them had uttered a word while Flutter was there. He expected it. It was rare anyone other than himself spoke when Flutter was around. No one liked the man. Well, they thought he was batshit crazy and a little annoying. Ainz finally said, "Well, that took a lot shorter than it normally did." They all laughed. That was true. Flutter usually stuck around for at least an hour after to ask questions. Maybe they should always make his reward to go to the library. They might even be able to just leave him in there and learn about the magic from this world from the crazy old man. Oriole, any progress on our other venture? Normally, such a vague question would require some thinking on the other person's part, but not for Oriole. She knew exactly what her father was asking. Oh yes, Swear has indeed broken past the level cap of maid and obtained a class unique to Nazarick. Her will to only be a maid gave her an 11th level that was unobtainable by any of the homunculi maids and changed the name of her class from maid to expert maid. Oriole lets that sink in for a moment before she continues. I believe that, along with the others who we have had officially and unofficially join Nazarick that we oversee, I have enough evidence for a conclusion. Those that we join to Nazarick through blood like the Swords of Darkness or Archie will stopping developing unique classes. In exchange, they level a bit faster and can be more specific in where they apply their knowledge. Those that we don't, they level a bit slower, know fewer spells and abilities, but gain classes we have never seen before more often than not. That gave Albedo an idea to voice. So, it would be ideal if we allowed their first advancement to take place without the knowledge of Nazarick. If they can survive long enough that their progress begins to slow because they are higher level, we can join them to Nazarick to bridge that gap. They should have learned sufficient unique classes by then if they were going to achieve them. Taylar agreed, but also added a little something. That sounds about right, Albedo. Although, it might be a good idea to let most of them never join with Nazarick. If they can get high enough level on their own with just nice equipment, they may unlock powerful, unique classes we know nothing about. Something like Ainz Grim Reaper or Eclipse or my Holy Saint classes. We must also take into consideration that we plan on changing some of these people's races. Of course, only if they desire it. I don't see many turning down the chance, though. Ainz decided to voice his thoughts on the matter. I think we should only let a very few select people actually take the blood oath for Nazarick. We acted a little rash with the Swords of Darkness. I'm not sure if they would be as loyal as they are if we hadn't gotten lucky with Seabass finding swear. Right now, I'd only consider the 4 in Karn or Elena's. I doubt that the list will increase anytime soon. Taylar was definitely going to take one of those people off that list for now. You should leave Lena's for now. After I cured her curse, all her cursed night levels changed to Night Protector. I'd love to see where that gets her now that she is nearing the end of it. Oriole chimed in with her 2 cents as well. I think we should make an item for Ninya now that gains her all the arcane spells she should possess, since we have learned this. After that, we should just let everyone else be and continue to observe. We have a few years at least before we have to decide what to do. Taylar had to let her daughter know that part of her idea was already in motion and almost finished. Don't worry about the item for Ninya, Oriole. I already have the blacksmith working on a caster ring for her with an arcane data crystal in it. It should be ready by the time she is done with that noble and we return from the Riestei's kingdom. Oriole nods at her mother, then everyone can see she is getting a message. It isn't long before they know the contents. Father, mothers, the carriages have reached the stopping point, and they are all awaiting your arrival, so they can continue the journey. Thank you, Oriole. Ainz turns to Albedo. I still think you should stay here. Yuri said you are only a few weeks from giving birth. You will be safer here, and more comfortable. I'll indeed be more comfortable, but with the party you demanded coming with us since I am going, I doubt there is going to be a safer place in this world than with everyone going. Albedo giggled at the end. Ainz went bats hit crazy overboard with security when Albedo refused to budge on coming along. She would rather sit in Nazarick herself, but if she was to be the one who handled the Riestei's kingdom's integration into their kingdom, she needed to be there for this. I didn't go that overboard, did I? Ainz almost mumbled to himself, but they all heard it and laughed. It was Taylar who told him exactly how far overboard he went. Let's see. The entirety of the highest level homunculi made party, Lena's, Lupus Regina, Yuri Alpha, Rabido, and Cositus. That's 9 people not including us, and our Soul Eater/Death Cavalier escorts or the 8-Edge Assassins and Shadow Demons. I'm going to say yes. You did go a bit overboard. Well, my queens need protecting, so nothing is overboard. Ainz looked set on that being the only reason he needed, and said no more. Taylar wasn't so keen to let it go before teasing him. You think us dainty little flowers, my love. I doubt anything in this world could do much to harm Lupus Regina, let alone myself or Albedo. She playfully bumped his shoulder, but it didn't look like he enjoyed that joke. There was no smile on his face, just dead seriousness as he said. They are not for your protection, but for the protection of this world. His "I'm not bullshitting about that" look made Albedo instantly ask. What do you mean their protection, love? I promise you, if either of you is ever harmed by anyone, I will burn this entire world to the ground until only Nazarick remains and there are no threats to you. Taylar slides right up to him, takes his hand, squeezes her legs together, and tries with all her might to will her words to happen as she quietly says, "I forgot something in the room. Can you come back with me to grab it?" Ainz didn't miss the batting of her eyelashes, the flush on her cheeks, or the desire suddenly burning in her eyes for him. He was about to answer until he felt another hand slide into his free one and looked to see Albedo right up next to him as well. Albedo said to him, "I believe I forgot something as well. Could you help me take care of that, husband?" Both of them were looking as if they were going to devour him. He couldn't even answer with words, just nodded his head and activated his ring. Unfortunately, they didn't go anywhere. He wondered what the hell was wrong until Oriel's voice was heard saying, "First, I love that my parents love one another. But do you really need to do that in front of your daughter?" Ainz and Taylar actually looked a bit embarrassed. Albedo was still only staring at Ainz. "Second, you have plenty of time for that after you get back. I swear it would be better to send the three of you in different directions so we could get some things accomplished on time. You'll understand one day, Oriole." Taylar says to her daughter. Ainz, on the other hand,
No.
"No, you won't. Boys are the worst, they smell. They think they know everything, they are messy, unorganized, immature." Ainz was going to continue for another hour of negatives if possible, but Taylar smacked him before he could continue anymore. For being the god of death, the man was a complete softie when it came to Oriole. Taylar, Albedo, and everyone else could tell Oriole had grown used to her father's overprotectiveness from the shake of her head. She even giggled a bit before opening a gate to the awaiting carriages. Ainz gave her a last hug before asking her, "Are you sure you are all right being in charge, so Pandora's actor may spend more time in the treasury?" "I'll be fine, father. I have the other guardians, Pleiades, and everyone else to help if I need it. Go get mothers more kingdoms. I'll be fine for a few days on my own." "All right, baby girl. I love you. Be careful." "I love you too, father, but I can take care of myself. You big worrywart. You do remember I am a level 100 spellcaster who specializes in teleportation and divination magic, right?" Ainz shrugs his shoulders. "I'll always worry about you, baby girl." Then he steps through the gate to take this unwanted carriage ride. Once they stepped through the gate, Ainz helped Albedo, then Taylar into the carriage. He turned, but the other three joining them in this carriage stood frozen, waiting for him to enter. He instead motioned for them to come and helped Lena's, Yuri Alpha, then Rubido in before entering himself. He definitely thought he would get a window seat, but it looked like Taylar and Albedo had other ideas. The only spot open for him was right in the middle of both of them. The moment he sat down, they both took a hand, intertwined their fingers with his, and leaned their heads on his shoulder. He'd be lying if he said it wasn't comfortable, but he did think they were wasting the window seat. He supposed they had seen it before. It wasn't like they didn't travel on this road to the capital before. Now, he just had to wait for this carriage ride to be over. He still thought it would have been quicker to just teleport there, but he couldn't ignore the wonderful feeling of his queens snuggled up against him. Perhaps this trip wouldn't be so bad after all. Prince Zanuck had known about this day for a week now. When his father had informed him and his sister that the rulers of the Psycho Kingdom would be here in a week, it fell to him to greet them. With his brother still missing, his father all but checked out of ruling completely, and his sister concerning herself more with orphans nowadays than saving their family, Prince Zanuck needed to act the proper prince. He wasn't even sure if he would be a prince after this day was over, but he was surely the best candidate for the new king regent. The only two Prince Zanuck had been concerned with getting the position over him now that his brother was gone were Marquis Raven and Marquis Bullope. Now, he didn't need to worry about either of them. Marquis Raven hadn't even answered the summons to the capital, and he was sure their new king and queens would have something to say about that. Marquis Bullope had turned out to be a traitor to the Riestai's kingdom and perished in the Battle of the Katsa Plains. This was how Prince Zanuck found himself sitting atop his horse in his very uncomfortable armor. It was only the second time he had put it on, but it didn't lessen the discomfort he felt wearing it. To add to his uneasy with everything happening about today, the stormy and gloomy-looking clouds had somehow completely dissipated, and the only thing greeting him right now was sunshine and pleasant weather. Well, he guessed it would be pleasant if he wasn't in all this armor. That made the sudden nice weather not so nice to Prince Zanuck. Instead, it only added to his discomfort in the form of sweat. It was one of the very few things Prince Zanuck wished Marquis Raven was still around for. He didn't know much about magic, and without Marquis Raven, he didn't have his tiger scroll to check for information. The royal capital's meteorologist had yelled at all of them that the current weather was impossible to be as it was. The man had been 90% accurate during his many years, so no one doubted him. If any did, the fact it was only clear over the capital and the path the rulers of the Psycho Kingdom were following should have made it obvious that nothing about what was happening could be impossible. After hearing of their might on the Katsa Plains, Prince Zanuck was certain something such as controlling the weather should be within the power of them to achieve, even if he had never heard of such a thing. He would need to look into getting his own X-adventures so he could learn about these things. If I can even afford to hire such people, I might be nothing but a beggar after they leave here. My prince. Prince Zanuck was snapped out his thoughts and musings by one of his soldiers. It only took him a moment to realize why the man had shouted. He could see the carriages carrying the rulers of the Psycho Kingdom getting closer by the second. He was a little surprised at the size of the small convoy. Normally, a traveling royal family would have several carriages. Prince Zanuck knew on the rare occasion they had such a venture, there were no less than 10 carriages to attend all their needs from soldiers to supplies to servants. The convoy of the Psycho Kingdom only contained 2 carriages. That did not diminish what he felt. They were still a ways from arriving, but Prince Zanuck could feel the intense pressure radiating from the party. It made him doubly glad they had used all their influence to shut down the streets the party would be traveling. All right, everyone. Remember, this is not some envoy from a foreign country. These are the new rulers of this country, so act accordingly. After what they did at the Katsa Plains, I wouldn't try to upset them in any way, so let's show them we are still proud and dignified. Yes, sir. All of the knights replied and waited for the carriages to reach them. When the vanguard was finally closing in on them, Prince Zanuck knew his men were using all their willpower to remain still. He saw the black-armored knight riding a jet-black, red-eyed unicorn. His men were doing a good job of keeping still under the circumstances, but he couldn't say the same about his warhorse. It was trembling like a leaf by the time the vanguard had come upon them. The creature clenched its clawed hand and pounded it into his chest once before saying, "We are the vanguard security for their majesties, the exalted rulers of the Psycho Kingdom." The creature's voice made goosebumps rise all over Prince Zanuck's body and all of his hair stand on end. Prince Zanuck could hear something akin to pride in the creature's voice also. He gathered up his courage to address the creature. "I am Prince Zanuck Vailron Agana Ryle Vazelf. I am here on His Majesty's orders to guide your party to the royal palace, if you would please follow behind us." "Then we shall avail ourselves to your guidance, Prince Zanuck. This one does not bear a name. You may call me by my species. This one is a Death Cavalier." "Shall it be all right to address you as Sir Cavalier, then?" "This one would be honored to be acknowledged as such." Prince Zanuck saw the Death Cavalier pause for a moment, and it looked as if he was listening intently for orders. After a few moments, he looked at Prince Zanuck and said, "Our exalted rulers wish to send out an envoy to ask some questions. Will that be all right with you, Prince Zanuck?" Prince Zanuck was about to ask the same thing, but to speak with the ruler directly to convey what was going on. He supposed this worked as well. He was hoping to further ingratiate himself to them and get closer to the position of King Reagent. He also knew they may have asked it as a question, but there was no denying anything they wished. The tone of the Death Cavalier made it obvious he would only accept a yes from him. Of course, Sir Cavalier. I would be honored to answer any questions Their Majesty's envoy has. The Death Cavalier motioned for Prince Zanuck to follow, and he did. He was rather proud of himself for keeping his expressions so neutral in such a situation, but his horse was getting worse by the second. Luckily, he kept his horse calm enough to make it a few feet before the first carriage before the Death Cavalier stopped. Prince Zanuck was a bit worried his horse would buck him off or run away, so he dismounted to await the envoy. It wasn't long before the Death Cavalier said, "This is the envoy of Their Majesties, Lady Albedo." I can only imagine what sort of monster is going to come out of that carriage. I know the king and his queens aren't human. This Death Cavalier is just some soldier to them. I can only imagine what kind of monster would be powerful enough to be their envoy. Prince Zanuck looked up at the carriage as the door slowly opened. The carriage was very expensive looking. Prince Zanuck couldn't imagine the price of such a thing. When the door finally opened, a figure emerged and Prince Zanuck couldn't believe his eyes. He had never thought any woman could surpass his sister in beauty. Only Holy Queen Kalka could even compare, possibly his sister's friend Lakis, but she would be the bottom end of the top tier of beauty in this world. The beauty the woman possessed who stepped out of that carriage was hard to put into words. Lady Albedo made his sister look like a homeless, malnourished commoner you wouldn't even bother to waste a scoff of pity on. One of the most surprising observations was she appeared to be human. He could not see any wings, horns, or any other additional appendages a non-human would have. Everything about her was otherworldly in its beauty. Her golden hair, gold eyes, her figure, the shape of her face, even her lips were beautiful. Once he had taken her in, his only response was immediate and felt completely appropriate. Prince Zanuck knelt and bowed his head. He couldn't see anything but the ground, but he heard every knight he brought with him do the same. The sound of a large group of metal knees hitting the ground alerted him to such. Most would think a prince doing such a thing would be embarrassing. He truly thought laying down completely in front of this beauty would be more fitting, but he had to draw the line somewhere and keep some of his dignity. "Please, raise your head, sirs, Prince. I am simply an envoy, not one of our exalted rulers, Their Majesties, exalted Queen Albedo Olgown, exalted Queen Taylar Olgown, or exalted King Ainz Olgown." I know Lord Ainz said sister was taking over the Riestai's portion of their new kingdom and to say her name first, but Lord Ainz should always be first. My Mamanga deserves nothing less than always being first. Albedo had done the proper greeting as she believed an envoy should, but she could not keep those thoughts from her mind. When another voice popped into her mind, she then realized her folly. "I love it when you call me Mamanga, my love." It took a lot for Albedo not to turn red in embarrassment and adoration. She was horrified that she forgot Oriole telepathically link her to Ainz in case she got stuck in the conversation. This was her first time doing anything other than protecting someone. She also wanted to blush a deep crimson at his loving tone. A few words of compliment in that angelic voice had her swooning like a lovesick puppy. It took a considerable amount of her willpower, but she kept composed. "At once, Lady Albedo." Prince Zanuck stood, and he heard his men do the same. He finally got a good look at her so he could talk to her properly, and his words failed him. The smile on her face made his mind go blank. He had just willed himself through countless terrifying monsters to make it to this carriage, but this woman's beauty was completely overwhelming him. He knew he stared for much longer than proper etiquette dictated, but he finally pulled himself together enough to get out a sentence. It wasn't exactly the proper question, but he needed it answered. "Forgive me, Lady Albedo, but may I know how to properly address you?" Prince Zanuck realized that was vague and tried to clarify a bit. Perhaps a better way to phrase it would be, "What is your position in the Psycho Kingdom?" No one knew anything about the Psycho Kingdom. As such, Prince Zanuck had no idea how to address any being from there other than the king and his queens. He had no idea what to call this goddess of beauty. Lore, exalted King Ainz Olgaun thought this may come up. I was informed that the appropriate title you may understand would be ambassador. Although, that is only partially true, as I am not here to negotiate, just get the answers to a few questions their majesties have. Thank you, Ambassador Albedo. I shall answer any questions you have to the best of my abilities. Thank you, Prince Zanuck. The first one should be rather obvious, but why did you stop us from proceeding straight to the royal palace? Prince Zanuck was rather relieved the first question was easy to answer. His mind was working overtime to concentrate on anything other than Lady Albedo. The royal family thought it appropriate for their majesties to have a royal escort to the palace. My father is of an advanced age, so the duty happily fell to me, Ambassador Albedo. As expected. Now, where are all the people? Their majesties like to let their people see them, interact with them, and hear their troubles. Why are there no people here to greet their majesties? Prince Zanuck slightly panics for the first time. He did not know that, and it could backfire on him. He thought he was sparing the people having to see who ruled over them now, but it looked like a mistake in hindsight. We thought it would be better if their majesties had a clear path to the royal palace. We wanted to make sure their majesties were settled first before anything else we had planned. Albedo nodded at his answer, and Prince Zanuck was a bit relieved. Either she believed him or his answer didn't matter. He really couldn't discern any emotion from her right now. It was hard enough not to kneel back down in her divine presence every moment he looked at her. What exactly do you have planned for their majesties? Of course. First, there is a dinner tonight scheduled with the whole royal family after their majesties settle in their rooms. Tomorrow, we will visit the theaters during the day and hold a dinner party at night with all the nobles of the Aiz kingdom. The day after, there will be a concert by the palace's orchestra in the afternoon, and after that, we hope their majesties would name the new king regent. Albedo looked to be contemplating all he said for a moment. It didn't take her long to address the itinerary they had planned. While some of that is fine, their majesties would like to amend such an itinerary. While today and tonight are fine, tomorrow, their majesties wish to meet with some of your nobles before the dinner party. They shall provide a list of the ones they wish to speak to, so they will be unable to attend the theater. The day after that, there is no need for the orchestra. Their majesties wish to name the new regent in the afternoon, and then address the people with the new regent afterward. We will certainly try our best to change around the schedule to their majesties' wishes. Prince Zanuck looked for Albedo's answer, and for the first time, he wasn't awestruck by her beauty. He gulped in pure fear, and a cold sweat broke out all over his body. The soft, beautiful goddess gaze had been replaced with one of utter power. Her tone conveyed much the same impression as she said, "Don't try, Prince Zanuck.
Get it done."
O of Seacourse, Ambassador Albedo. Prince Zanuck's voice came out as squeaky as a scarred little mouse. Albedo's gaze softened immediately, and she gestured toward the head of the convoy. "Please lead the way, Prince Zanuck." Prince Zanuck numbly nodded as Albedo turned back to climb in the carriage. After the glare he just endured, the Death Cavaliers didn't seem nearly as scary as he mounted his horse and led the convoy to the royal palace. Once Prince Zanuck had made it to the royal palace, he dismounted his horse and waited for the carriages to stop with a small army of servants behind him. Surprisingly, the second carriage was the first to open, and Prince Zanuck had trouble processing who stepped out of that particular carriage. The first one out was a blue-looking insect of some sort. The creature was massive and his weapons were very impressive. The creature had 4 arms. Both right arms were holding a massive halberd while his top left arm held a very long, slim, curved blade. Next out of the carriage were 4 maids wearing matching maid outfits. All 4 of them were beautiful. Not nearly the level of Ambassador Albedo, but above Renner's level. They also all looked human. Prince Zanuck was a little dumbfounded. His mouth completely dropped when the last person emerged from the carriage. The last to step out was another maid, but her outfit was completely different than the others. It looked more like a dress with a very, very long slit up one side that showed off a ton of leg. He could see her stockings every time she stepped with her left leg. Her red hair was in twin ponytails, and her figure and face were insanely beautiful. The only person he had ever seen more beautiful was Ambassador Albedo. All 6 of the carriage occupants made it to the first one, and if he didn't know already, you could tell these were the servants the way they formed up. The red-headed maid opened the door as the other 4 maids made a makeshift path for the occupants of this carriage. The blue insect was obviously standing guard. The first occupant out of the lead carriage surprised Prince Zanuck. The moment he emerged from the carriage, all the servants of the convoy except the blue insect kneeled immediately. It wasn't hard to discern this was Ainz. Even if Prince Zanuck hadn't been given a very detailed description of what he looked like, there would be no mistaking this being. The blue insect was at least a foot taller than him, probably closer to 2 feet, but Ainz Olgaun's presence made him seem like a giant next to the blue insect. Prince Zanuck was at a loss at what to do with what was happening. This was nothing like their royal protocols, as the king was never the first to exit. It threw him for an even bigger loop when the king stopped the moment both his feet touched the ground and turned toward the carriage. Every one of his personal servants and guards stood again, and he extended his hand for the next person to take. Prince Zanuck was now completely lost as another maid emerged. She also had a unique uniform as the red-headed one did, and she was also just as beautiful. Hers was more a graceful beauty than the redhead's lusty beauty. She was wearing glasses, and her hair was in a bun. She had on 2 spiked gauntlets, and she looked hesitant to be accepting her king's help out of the carriage. The next person out was a surprise to Prince Zanuck. She looked even more hesitant than the maid to accept her king's hand, but complied regardless. Prince Zanuck understood why. He knew this person, or at least knew of her. She was Lena's rock bruise, but she looked much different than when he saw her last in the Baharuth Empire. No longer was half her face hidden behind her hair. She had it completely pulled back from her face, and Prince Zanuck realized that her curse had been lifted. He had never seen that side of her face before, but she was proudly displaying it. He was certain she was beautiful, even it was nothing compared to the maids that had already emerged. She could now be counted in that small category of women who were near his sister's level of beauty. The next person out of the carriage was someone Prince Zanuck will never forget. She didn't hesitate a moment and took her king's hand the moment she spotted it. He easily noticed the smile that adorned her face the moment Ambassador Albedo took her king's hand. Unlike the others, he even kissed the back of her hand the moment her feet were on the ground. When the next person began to exit, all the servants and guards dropped to their knees once more. If that act hadn't clued him into this being one of the queens, her beauty would have led him in that direction regardless, as he was taken aback by her resemblance to Ambassador Albedo. If Albedo was the kind of beauty you instantly feel in love with, the first queen out made you instantly think of desire. She looked like Albedo's twin, but the black wings at her hips and horns protruding from her head made Prince Zanuck think that was impossible. The aura coming off of her was one of desire, and her pure white dress had a lot to do with that. Unlike Albedo, who was wearing something that looked like a cross between a robe and a dress, this black-haired, yellow-eyed goddess was wearing something that showed off every curve she had. That included the enormous baby bump she was sporting. That did nothing to take away from her beauty. In fact, it almost looked as if she was glowing in that state. The king kissed her cheek, and he expected the servants to rise, but they did not. Instead, they stayed kneeling while the king extended his hand once more. Prince Zanuck couldn't believe his eyes at the next to emerge, even if he knew it would be the last queen. The woman was beauty, elegance, and regal bearing personified. Her wavy, blonde hair, piercing emerald green eyes, perfect figure, and unparalleled face were impossible to forget. Prince Zanuck finally understood how Albedo could be an ambassador and not a queen. Both queens were on a level of beauty even the servants they brought with them couldn't match. Even if all the servants were the most beautiful women he had ever seen, the two queens and the ambassador were on their own level of beauty above them. Prince Zanuck had no idea when he had kneeled, but he noticed he was, along with every servant he brought out to greet the new monarchs. He rose when he saw the king kiss the second queen's cheek, take both his queens' hands, and start walking in his direction. "Welcome, your majesties." All of the servants who Prince Zanuck brought rang out their greeting as instructed. Prince Zanuck was impressed at their greeting. Yuri Alpha thought they could use some practice. She noticed a couple of people slightly out of rhythm and tune with the rest. "Thank you for the welcome, Prince Zanuck and everyone you brought out to greet us. I am the exalted king of the Psycho Kingdom, Ainz Olgown." Ainz holds up the hand interlocked with Albedo's and continues. "This is exalted queen of the Psycho Kingdom, Albedo Olgown." He drops her hand and holds up the other. "And this is the exalted queen of the Psycho Kingdom, Taylar Olgown. Welcome to Valencia Palace, your majesties. Home of the royal family of Ainz." Prince Zanuck says with a bow and motions to the servants. "These are the servants who we chose to attend you. I hope they will be of great service to you." Ainz noticed the way Yuri, Lupus Regina, and the homunculi made stiffened at that statement. He knew they didn't think these humans could properly attend to their monarchs. He knew he couldn't completely offend the people who work here, though. He remembered two of the servants from Demiurge's reports, though. Both were female maids. One of them was a maid for Prince Renner, and one of the few that lunatic didn't hate since she never said anything bad about her puppy. The second was from a noble family in Ainz who bought elf slaves when they could, but freed them and offered employment. They had 10 such elves in their employ and left them stretched thin on finances trying to do a good deed. Ainz was going to make sure that family got its just reward for being one of the few who weren't complete shitbags in this country. "We appreciate the offer, but we brought our own servants to attend to us." Ainz noticed the happy smiles of the Pleiades and homunculi maids at his statement. He saw Prince Zanuck about to say something but held his hand up to stop him. He didn't want to offend the staff here, so he wasn't done. However, they do not know their way around your palace, so he points to the two maids he was remembering before. "If those two could help our maids learn where everything is, I believe that will be sufficient. I don't want to hold up so much of your staff to attend to us when two would suit just as well. I promise you, there is no one more professional than our servants." "As you wish, your majesty. If you would follow me, I can lead you to your rooms." Prince Zanuck started to turn but noticed Ainz giving Taylar a quick kiss before he heard the queen say, "Send Sixus or Foss back here when I return so I can find our rooms, my king." "I will. Send a message when you are returning, my queen." Ainz gave her one last quick kiss, then Taylar turned to leave with Lupus Regina and Lena's. Prince Zanuck had no idea what was going on right now. "I'm sorry, your majesty, but does exalted Queen Taylar not want to see her rooms?" "She has business in the city. She shall return later. Now, if you could show us to our rooms." Ainz wanted to get there so he could make the room their own. He had no doubt he'd be creating a bed with magic and replacing some of the furniture. Not only would it be more comfortable, but it would also stop his servants from complaining it wasn't nice enough for their monarchs. It seemed Prince Zanuck didn't want to let it go, though. "I'm sorry again, your majesty, but shouldn't her majesty have more than 2 guards if she is to go into the city?" Prince Zanuck was trying to figure out what the hell she could possibly need to do in the capital. Ainz chuckled, but it wasn't him that replied. Taylar stopped in her tracks and looked at the prince before saying, "Did you not hear what I did to the Imperial Army with my maids on the Katsa Plains?" She raised an eyebrow and Prince Zanuck's hair stood on end from her gaze. "I assure you, Prince Zanuck, nothing or no one in the city could ever harm me unless I allowed it." With that said, Taylar left the courtyard with Lupus Regina and Lena's on either side of her. Prince Zanuck knew he couldn't stop her from doing as she pleased, so he simply bowed and led the rest of them to their rooms. He realized it was going to be a long 3 days. The mood in the Royal Flower Inn was quite somber. It had been like this for a couple of weeks now as Blue Rose tried to figure out what to do next. The Riestai's kingdom had essentially been decimated, and they had no idea what to do anymore. They had talked about leaving the capital on numerous occasions, but could never settle on where to go if they did. A few times they had been tempted to go to Irantal to speak with the Forsaken, but they weren't sure how safe they would be in that city now. Tia and Tina had been waiting for their contacts to deliver news from the city, but they still hadn't shown up yet. It was nerve-wracking because it had never taken either twin such a long time to gather information before. The only aspect that wasn't doom and gloom was Gagarin. It had taken a few days, but she had returned. Her and Evil Eye were starting to rebuild their relationship, and Blue Rose was closer than ever. It was everything else that was a problem. There were practically no jobs left for an adamantite adventure group to do. It was looking like they would need to move to another country, but where? Now they knew Evil Eye was a vampire. There was nowhere for them to go. The slain theocracy would have been a no before they even found out she was a vampire. First, they didn't have adventure guilds, and second, they had nothing but problems with them in the past. The Holy Kingdom was definitely out of the question because of Evil Eye's race. The Holy Queen was a decent person, but Evil Eye would be hiding again. Not to mention, if she was ever found out, all of Blue Rose would probably pay for it. Those were their only two options other than the Psycho Kingdom. Locke's hadn't heard what became of their Adventurers Guild since Tia and Tina's contact had yet to appear. She assumed there would be much need for it if the rumors about the Katsa Plains were true. The new rulers of those lands would hardly need adventurers to take care of monsters if their army was made up of legendary undead and angels. The future was looking bleak for Blue Rose. They were all sitting around in silence contemplating their future when they all heard the front door of the inn open. Normally, it warrants much but a glance to see who it was, but all of them lingered for longer. Two people stepped through the door that Blue Rose had not seen in a while. Bella and Nabe from the Forsaken. It was not only a welcome sight to see two people Locke's saw as a friend. Well, she did about Bella. Nabe never seemed to like anyone. It also meant they might get some answers since the Forsaken were based out of Irantal. Bella spotted them and made her way over with a smile on her face. "Hey, Blue Rose. I'm glad I found you here. I wasn't sure if you would be in or not." Of course, as a leader, it was Locke's who returned the greeting. "It is good to see you again, Bella and Nabe. We are glad you are here. We hoped you may be able to answer some questions for us." Doppelbella was sure they had plenty of things that needed answering. After all, their masters had held up their information from Irantal for a reason. Luckily for them, they didn't have to worry about trying to explain their master's grand plan. "We would be happy to answer any questions you had, Locke's. However, I did come here for a purpose. Do you mind if we speak first before any of your questions? We have waited for weeks for news. I'm sure a few more minutes won't kill us." Locke's didn't mind going over whatever brought Bella here today first. She trusted the fellow adamantite adventurer to answer her questions later as best she could. A few more minutes wouldn't change that. "Thank you," Bella says as she sits. "The reason I came today was to see if you still wanted to have that chat about divine magic as well as the future of Blue Rose." Well, Locke's wasn't prepared for that. "I don't mind chatting about divine magic, but what do you mean the future of Blue Rose?" "I told you that my master was particular about who she spoke with, correct?" "Yes, I had hoped you'd bring her along when we spoke of this. As it happens, I did get a chance to speak with her about you. Surprisingly, well, at least to me, was that she wished to speak with you as well. Do you have time to speak with her?" "I don't. That is..." Locke's is at a loss until she realizes how Bella phrased that. "You mean right now?" "Yes, as it happens." Doppelbella never got to finish as the front door opened again, and in stepped two women. The first one was an absolutely gorgeous redhead in a maid outfit that looked more like a dress. Everything about her, from her figure to her posture, was perfect. The second woman who stepped in Locke's knew. She had not seen her in many years, but she wouldn't forget that face, at least half of it. She had never seen Lena's entire face, but she was proudly displaying it now. The members of the Forsaken immediately took a knee when Lupus Regina said, "You stand in the presence of the exalted queen of the Psycho Kingdom, Taylar Olgaun." The queen that entered was nothing like Blue Rose expected. They heard she slaughtered thousands at the Katsa Plains. They were hard-pressed to believe a woman that beautiful and graceful who gave off an aura of motherly affection could do such a thing. As Lockuse was taking in her wavy, blonde hair, emerald green eyes, white wings, and divine aura, she realized at some point herself and everyone else had fallen on their knees. Everyone except Evil Eye, who was backing away, trembling like a leaf as the queen approached her. Evil Eye could sense the most malicious killing intent she had ever felt coming from this queen. She was so terrified because it was directed right at her. Before she could back completely into the wall, the queen held up her hands and said, "Sorry, I should have realized this would happen." Taylar took one of her blades off the small of her back, and Evil Eye could tell that was the malicious aura. She reached to the side, and a black hole appeared. She tucked the blade inside, and the aura completely disappeared. Evil Eye slumped down, finally relieved to be away from that much killing intent. "I apologize, Evil Eye. I should have known that weapon would bring you trouble. It was created to kill the undead after all." Taylar said that loud enough for Blue Rose to hear, but no one else in the inn. It made everyone relax more and rise from their knees. Taylar took a seat across from Lockuse with Lena's to her left and Lupus Regina to her right. "It looks as if you know Lena's." Taylar motions to her. "Have you two met before?" It is Lena's who answers, not Lockuse. "We have, goddess, sorry, my queen. I met Lockuse not long after I had been cursed and almost joined her adventure party." That was news to everyone here, including Blue Rose. They never had any idea that Lena's had almost joined their group. "Oh, perhaps your history with dear Lockuse here will make this a little easier then. My apprentice told me you were interested in how she uses her divine magic. If your mind is open enough to accept Evil Eye, perhaps you would be open to what I have to say." "Your Majesty, may I ask you something before we begin?" "If you wish, ask away, Lockuse." Is it true what you did on the Katsa Plains?" "I suppose that would depend on what you heard I did." "We heard." Lockuse gulps. "We heard you killed thousands in that battle. Is it true?" That sounds right. I believe Albedo told me it was 30,000 if I'm not mistaken." Taylar looked very nonchalant about killing that many people. It did not sit well with Lockuse or, from the looks of it, Gagarin, especially when Gagarin said, "You don't seem too troubled that you killed so many, Your Majesty." Neither Lupus Regina nor Lena's liked the tone Gagarin took with Taylar. They both grabbed their weapons, but Taylar stopped them before they drew them. She knew this woman was all brawn and no brain. "You're right, I'm not. I'm sure you wouldn't be if you were in my shoes. Unless you allow people to try and pillage your home and try to kill everyone you hold dear without any repercussions. Then, of course, you'd be torn up about it. Of course, you'd also be a coward who refused to protect your home." "I'm sorry, Your Majesty." Gagarin didn't mean to be disrespectful. Lockuse glared at her, but Gagarin didn't seem to care. Taylar wanted to laugh, but she didn't. She wasn't particularly fond of Gagarin to begin with. "No need to cover for your friend, Lockuse." She meant everything she said exactly as she said it. The problem is she sees the Baharuth Empire as an innocent country that simply was in my way for conquest. Isn't that right, Gagarin? The woman was going to answer, but Taylar didn't let her. Of course, if she knew that the Empire found our home, hired over 20 workers to kill everyone inside and steal all our treasures, she would have a different opinion. Isn't that right, Gagarin? This time Taylar did wait for Gagarin to answer, but the woman just opened and closed her mouth like a koi fish. Taylar realized the woman wasn't going to answer, so she continued. "You did know I only attacked the Baharuth Empire. It was my king who decimated the army of Riestai's. He didn't wish to do that either, but your king refused our proposal and brought an army of over 200,000 to the final parley. Did you think there would be no bloodshed after such actions? Taylar gives them enough time to soak that in, but not enough time to comment as she continues. The bloody emperor sent people to our home to kill us and steal from us. King Ramposa refused to give back a tiny piece of a kingdom that belonged to us long before any of you were here. The slain theocracy was pillaging and killing every commoner in the area we wished to protect with no help from their king. He picked his pride over his people's safety, and his people paid for his choices. Their choices led to that battle, not ours. We did everything we could to resolve it peacefully. Gagrin looked away embarrassed after her speech. Tia and Tina had a look that resembled respect. Evil Eye was looking at her with something akin to awe. Locus looked understanding finally, and Lupus Regina and Lena's looked proud to be serving someone such as Taylar. We didn't know any of that, Your Majesty. I know Locus, which is why I wasn't very upset with Gagrin. You may be an adamantite adventure team, but you still don't know what goes on between kings and queens. Even your ninjas over there have their limits. You know our abilities? Tina and Tia both asked at the same time. Taylar thought they sounded like the servants of Nazarick with their perfectly in-tuned and harmonized question. She giggled a bit before saying, "Of course, I admire those who gain your particular set of skills and decide to give it up to help people instead of killing them for money. A very good friend of ours was just like you too." Taylar gets nostalgic for a moment. He would have liked you too, I think. Why you admire us? I did say that, did I not? Taylar looks to Lena's like she is confirming, and Lena's nods. Even those with the best intentions sometimes need someone who is willing to do what's necessary regardless of how it looks. I'd be a bit of a hypocrite if I didn't. As we established, I did kill 30,000 people not that long ago. That brought a silence to everyone until Locus asked, "How did you come to know the Forsaken, if I may ask?" That one is rather easy to answer. They found our home just like the Baharuth Emperor did. She didn't get to continue as Evil Eye asked, "How did they end up your apprentices and the workers your enemies then?" Simple, when they found our home, they knocked on the door. They didn't try to kick it down and loot our home. They told us they were searching for a powerful vampire. We took them under our wings, gave them gear, and sent them off to battle their foe. I know Bella said you were her master, but I didn't realize she got all her equipment from you as well. So you trained all of the Forsaken. Well, not sure if you noticed, but her dress looks identical to mine with only a few minor details different. I wish she would stop calling me master though, and I can't take credit for training all of them. Albedo trained Ariel, and Ainz trained Mammon and Nabe, so I didn't do it all by myself. His Majesty trained Nabe and Mammon? It was Evil Eye who asked that. Doppelnabe nodded her head at the vampire. It wasn't her place to speak when her exalted queen was here.
So Taylar said,
While I have a while until the dinner with the royal family to discuss divine magic, how you answer my other question will impact much more of what we discuss. So I'd like to talk about that first if it is all right. Sure, I'm not sure what it is, but I have no problem with that. Does anyone else? Locus looks at the other members of Blue Rose and doesn't see any objection. Taylar notices and continues. I wish to talk to you about the future of Blue Rose. Specifically, what you intend to do now that there is little for you to do in Ainz. Indeed, our missions have all but disappeared, but I'm sure it will pick back up eventually. Locus didn't want to admit yet that there was nothing left they could do in Ainz, and it showed in her answer. Taylar was about to shatter those thoughts. No, it won't. It might be called the Adventurers Guild, but you are actually just a bunch of monster hunters and escorts. None of your teams do any actual adventuring, and the job of a monster hunter is about to become extinct. But we also protect the innocent. Who is going to do that? Rarely you do, because the innocent can rarely afford to pay for your protection. She lets that sink into Locky's mind before continuing. And now the monsters you protect them from are under our control. They all know the consequences of violence against those from our kingdom, but that doesn't mean we don't have a purpose for the Adventurers Guild. What is going to become of it? My king has already had this talk with the guild master in Irantal Pluton Ainz, so I will tell you all what he told him. We want to turn the Adventurers Guild into a place that is full of actual adventurers. She knows they are confused, but continues. We want you all to adventure out into the unknown, to find new places, discover hidden treasures, and act as ambassadors to our kingdom. We will train you, equip you, and help you survive as you have never been taught. Adventurers are thrown out into the world, and more often than not die before they can even begin to show potential. We wish to change this. Now that all of Blue Rose looks intrigued at what she is saying, she makes sure to try and sell it as well as possible. She might not even have to use her perfect excuse for them to change their city of operation if all goes as well as it seems to be going. We have already constructed 2 dungeons for training. They are solely for the Adventurers Guild training purposes. You fight different kinds of enemies in different scenarios in different climates. You do fight real monsters who are trying to kill you, but even if you die, we can resurrect you for a small fee. Much, much cheaper than someone would pay Lockuse to raise someone from the dead even. Taylar leans toward them so only they can hear before she says to them, and unlike Lockuse, I can even bring an undead like Evil Eye back from the dead if she were to be the one to fall in battle. Lockuse couldn't help the startled expression. She didn't even think that was possible for anyone. So, what do you say? Does that sound like something that might interest you? Your Majesty, the number of questions I have now is incredible, but I sense a but coming somewhere in here. You want us to do something other than just stay in the Adventure Guild, am I correct? You are right, Lockuse. Bella told me you were perceptive. I'm glad to see she was right. First, you'd have to take a test to reevaluate your rank. You are an adamantite adventure team in the Riestai's kingdom, but to us, only Evil Eye is adamantite rank. Lockuse, Gagarin, Tia, and Tina were about to object, but Taylar stopped them with a hand and continued. Don't get me wrong, you are powerful, but that is by the normal standards of this kingdom. Now, I have many subordinates who would defeat your whole team. Lupus Regina here would tear through all of you in less than a minute, and even Lena's would give all of you a run for your money now. No one missed how Lena stood up a little taller and looked prouder after hearing that. It was hard to believe for Blue Rose. The one Taylar called Lupus Regina looked to have a blissful smile on her face hearing that. We don't plan on allowing any team who can't get up to what we would consider Orichalcum rank adventure out into the world. Those who can't achieve that level of power will be used for other, less dangerous jobs as they come up. How are adventurers supposed to make a living if that is the case? If we don't work, we don't make money. Training is all well and good, but it doesn't pay the bills. You are quite right, Tia. However, you will be paid a rate every week based on your rank. It will function similarly to how the army pays its soldiers. The difference being, there will be treasures to be found in the dungeon, and any job you do outside of training will be compensated as a bonus. That will not affect your base pay. Does that mean we will be a part of the Psycho Kingdom's army? No, it won't, Gagarin. The army will be strictly volunteers only. We will not force any of our citizens who do not wish to fight to do so. The battlefield is only meant for those who wish to be there. One weak link in an army can spell doom in battle. We will allow adventurers to be a part of the military if they wish. It will increase their pay since they will serve us in 2 capacities, but as I said, it is volunteer only. I don't really see any downside to this. Lockuse says. There has to be something else you wish from us, or you would have just said all of this from the start. Yes, I wish for you to move your base of operations from the Riestai's capital. You want us to leave our home? And go where? Why would we need to move for this? There are 2 reasons. First, we will not build a dungeon in Riestai's. The 2 we have built are already complete, and we see no reason for a third one. Second, I wish for you to move for Evil Eye. F for me. Taylar expected Evil Eye to be stunned. She wasn't disappointed. Taylar guessed if she wasn't wearing that mask, her mouth would be open in surprise. Yes, for you. I want you to move your base of operations from the Riestai's capital to Karn. There are no adventure groups there yet, and I believe your presence will attract a lot of them. Also, Karn is a city filled with humans, goblins, ogres, elves, and even the undead, so Evil Eye would not have to wear a mask. That sounds. Taylar stops Locky's from answering right now. They were here for 3 days, there was no need to rush. I will be in the capital for 3 days, so you have time to think about it. Instead of discussing magic, why don't you talk with the other members about it? We can always talk magic another time. The invitation still stands even if you refuse my offer. Thank you, Your Majesty. We will let you know as soon as we reach a decision. Taylar stands to leave, and everyone else does as well. Then Taylar remembers something she forgot to mention. Oh yes, I nearly forgot. On our 3rd day here, we will be speaking to the people in the city center with the new reagent of the Riestai's kingdom. I wanted to invite you all to come if you wish, and spread the word to anyone you see as well. We wish to speak to as many of the people as we can. With that, Taylar turns to leave. Lena's gave Locky's a nod before following Taylar out the door. Blue Rose had plenty to think about, and Lena's knew her telling them to take the deal immediately wouldn't let them work through it together. Ainz thought settling in their rooms would be a waste of time, but he found it was needed. There wasn't a single piece of furniture left in any of their rooms that actually belonged to the Riestai's kingdom. Ainz had only planned on creating a bed and a table for them to work at, but the servants were having none of that. They pretty much demanded the whole room be changed as none of it was high quality enough for their monarchs. Their words, not his. He had to contact Oriel before they did something drastic and have her open a gate so they could retrieve the furniture. Ainz didn't really want to, but when they all told him they would gladly run back to Nazarick to get the furniture, he had little choice in the matter. It also worked as something to do for the day since afterward, they had the most dreadfully boring dinner you could imagine with the royal family. Ainz was fairly certain Prince Anik was the 2nd most annoying person to ever exist. The only person he could think that was more annoying was Flutter, even if it was for a different reason. Ainz knew what Prince Anik was trying to do all throughout dinner. He wouldn't stop rambling about his thoughts to improve the Riestai's kingdom. He was obviously trying to get himself elected king reagent. Ainz was tempted to have Albedo handle the annoying bastard, but he thought she might actually kill him if he rambled on and on like this to her. He even thought about having Taylar or Albedo take over for him, but one glance at how he looked at Albedo and Taylar pushed that thought aside. Every time the prince thought Ainz wasn't looking, he would look at them. It was already hard enough for Ainz not to kill the annoying fucker. He was sure neither Taylar, Albedo, or Albedo would hesitate as Ainz was, so he kept the pudgy little fucker company all dinner. By the end of it, Ainz couldn't get out of there fast enough. Today wasn't a day he was looking forward to either. They were getting ready to meet with some of the nobles and speak with them privately one-on-one. Most of it was just for show to make them think they were trying to decide on a new reagent. In reality, they had already made their choice. He was honestly only interested in meeting with one of these nobles. He already knew enough about all of these nobles from Demiurge, Solution, Seabass, Renner, and Oriel to know almost all of them were completely shit people. Ainz, of course, had to request Marquis Raven and Viscount Naylan. He knew neither were there, and it would give him the evidence he needed for what he was going to do. He honestly hated politics, but as Taylar and Albedo reminded him regularly, he couldn't just kill everyone he disliked or didn't want to deal with. Well, he supposed he could, but then the list of people he needed to kill would just keep increasing. That sounded like a tedious life. He'd much prefer laying in bed in Nazarick with either Taylar and Albedo or Albedo. That sounded like a much more enjoyable life. Ainz hoped Ninya got her closure with Viscount Naylan. If he was in her position, that man wouldn't die for a very long time. He would make him beg for death for centuries before killing him, but that was his idea of revenge. Ninya's was probably much different. Sixis must have read Ainz's mind because she stepped into the sitting room right as he was about to call for her. Ainz, Taylar, and Albedo were all sitting at their new table, and he needed to speak with these as clowns eventually. Your Majesties, Ainz sighs. He really disliked when those from Nazarick had to be formal. The first noble from Riestais you have requested has arrived. Shall I send him in, Your Majesties? Ainz looks at both his queens. You ready to get this over with? Taylar giggles at his annoyed tone. Yep. Albedo pats his hand to reassure him. Don't worry, love. I'll do most of the talking. You just sit there and look intimidating. Ainz liked that plan. As he said, he only wanted to talk to one of these people. Send the first one in Sixis. The maid nods and exits the door. She was only gone for a few moments before she led the first Riestais noble into the room. As soon as Ainz saw his face, he realized even just sitting here, this would be torture. They had been at it for 3 hours now, and Ainz was even more disappointed than he thought he would be. He had the lowest expectation he thought he could have coming into this. He was proven wrong 10 times over as he now had an even worse opinion of this country. He didn't meet a single noble from this country that cared about anything or anyone but themselves. Thank God Albedo has to deal with this nightmare. I do kind of feel bad though. Luckily, she was made for boring political nonsense like this. Ainz was thoroughly aware his intelligence had gone through the roof, but he still didn't think he was as smart as Albedo, Demiurge, Oriole, or even Pandora's actor, as hard as the last one was to admit. He was learning everything very quickly. The library of Ashurbanipal had been immensely helpful in that. However, he didn't have all that knowledge imprinted in his brain from the moment he was created, so he was playing catch-up. Finally, the only noble Ainz was happy to speak with was led in by Fifth. She had taken Sixis place halfway through. The man's appearance gave Ainz the impression he would be someone to help anyone. The man was probably around 40 years of age, but he looked older. He gave off a sort of grandfatherly vibe, even if he wasn't that old. Ainz's first impression of this man was increased again as he was led to his seat. Lord Perron took a knee next to the chair before sitting. He was the first noble to do such a thing. Ainz liked where this was going and decided to cut in before Albedo. She had spoken to all of them before this, but Ainz wanted to talk to this man himself. Rise, Lord Perron, and please have a seat. The man stood and took his seat as instructed. Ainz only waited until the man looked up to start. Do you know why you were summoned here, Lord Perron? I would not presume to know the mind of a king or queen's, Your Majesty, but I assume it is to get to know me and what value I may bring to your rule. That is mostly true, and I have to say that, so far, we have been highly disappointed in what we see. Do you believe you can make us see it differently? I believe as a whole, you would have a better view to discern that, Your Majesty. I can only answer for myself, and what I can bring to your rule, Your Majesty. How do you rule your lands, the small ones you have, that would benefit our rule? I have no secret method, Your Majesty. I simply always try to do what is right. I promise I shall always do the same under the rule of yourself and your queens as well. I hear you have elf slaves? Is that true? Ainz knew they weren't slaves, but wanted to see how the man would answer. He had no idea why, but he liked this man for more reasons than just freeing some slaves. It is true. I have elf servants, Your Majesty. Servants? Did you not buy them as slaves? I did, Your Majesty, but I freed them and offered them jobs. I only saw you bring human servants, and not very many of them. How am I to believe you have actually freed these people you purchased? I would love to bring them, Your Majesty, but it is too dangerous for them outside of my lands. If the wrong person were to see them without a collar, they could end up slaves again, or worse. They know they are free to leave if they wish. They simply feel safer staying. I would be more than happy to have them speak with you if you wish, Your Majesty. Ainz liked that answer very much. If his son was anything like he was, Ainz was almost certain this family would be a much higher rank than what he was about to bestow on them soon. There is no need for that, Lord Perron. I wanted to see if you would be truthful with me. I know all about your elves. Now, how much do you know of our kingdom? Do you know anything about the other parts of our kingdom or how they are ruled? I'm afraid to say, Your Majesty, that the only things I have heard I would not repeat in front of you or your queens. Before we even spoke, I could tell the stories were not true. So you only knew we were monsters who slaughtered children, bathed in their blood, and made their parents watch before we killed them and turned them into undead then, right? Lord Perron paled immediately. He couldn't believe Ainz had been so blunt and accurate about what people spread in the capital after the battle at the Katza Plains. He couldn't even speak, he just nodded. Ainz laughed at his expression. It even brought covered-mouth giggles from Taylar and Albedo. Well, the first village we saved was Karn. Now, it is a city and soon it will be our capital. The reason I bring this up is it is a city of many different races. Humans were the lone occupants of the city for a long time. Now, it is a growing city that houses races from humans to goblins to elves and even some undead. The look Lord Perron is giving him was worth sitting through all the other jackasses that came before this. Ainz continues. Elves make up the second highest race in the population, and I believe soon they will eclipse the human population. All of them are freed slaves, the elves that is. Queen Taylar's high priestess is even an elf. Law number 1 in the Psycho Kingdom is all slavery is banned. As such, we wish to reward you for doing what you could with what you had to help slaves find peace and freedom. Why, Your Majesty? I was just doing what was right. Yes, you were, but you were the only one in this kingdom who has done anything right. So, Ainz pulls a scroll out of his robes and sets it in front of Lord Perron. One of the nobles has failed to answer the summons to court to meet with us. As such, he has vacated his title and lands. They are all now yours, Viscount Perron. Ainz can tell the man is shocked. He didn't need to see the man's expression. He could hear his mouth opening and closing, trying to figure out what to say like a koi fish. I don't know what to say, Your Majesties. I pray I can manage such a large amount of land and not let your generosity be wasted upon me. I have faith in your management skills and dream for the future. Also, managing it should be a little easier, knowing the former Viscount's wealth will be waiting for you to do with as you see fit. You may bring the people from your first lands there if you wish. Your elves should not be fearful of being seen after we leave. Our own undead shall serve alongside the guards of this city to prevent any of them from falling back into chains. Why are you letting me keep my old lands as well, Your Majesties? Of course, they are your lands and there is no reason to take them from you. You may do with them as you please. If you feel it is too much to manage, we will buy the land from you at a fair price and you can focus on your new lands. If I may ask, Your Majesties, Ainz motions for the man to continue. Could I name a new lord for those lands? I don't see a problem with that. Although, we would want to prove anyone you wish to give the land to. Did you have someone in mind? Dear Majesties, I feel as though even with your assurances and mine, some of the elves will still not want to leave the lands. My head butler is an elf named Arian. He was the first slave I ever freed and has been with me for almost 30 years. A man couldn't have a better servant, and I wish to reward all his years of service to me with the lordship of that land, Your Majesties. And here I thought I couldn't like you any more than I already did, Viscount Perron, giving back to those who serve faithfully and making history in the process. History, Your Majesty? Why, of course. You just endorsed the first ever non-human noble in the history of the Riestai's kingdom. Ainz could tell from the Viscount's expression that he didn't even realize that until Ainz said it. The man was true to his word and always tried to do what was right. He was already tempted to give him Marquis Raven's lands and titles. Write up the orders to make Arian, Lord Arian, and Queen Albedo will sign it before we leave. Your daughter is also just outside the door. Take her with you so you may share the good news and tell her she has the rest of the day off to spend celebrating with her family. We will see you at the feast tonight. Thank you, your majesties. My family shall never forget your kindness. Viscount Perron stood and gave a bow before Fifth led him back out of the room. He didn't need super hearing to hear his daughter, Belle, yell in surprise when her father told her what happened. Thank all that is unholy talking with these nobles is over with. Now it is just this stupid feast with these jackasses before we can finish up here and head back home. For the last month, Philip had felt like the luckiest man in all the known world. He had gone from the third son to heir, and now he was attending a noble party held by the royal family. It was only the second such party Philip had ever attended, but it outshone the previous one he had been to by miles. He had never seen this level of decadence at a party. Everything from the food to the servants to the guests' clothes was of the highest quality. The last one made Philip feel a little self-conscious. His clothes were rather plain compared to everyone else's, but he knew the reason for that and hoped to remedy it soon. He had no money. He knew it was because the heads of his family up until now were all useless. He also knew all that would change when he took over. He had a feeling his luck would continue, and how could he not think that? His older brother, the second son, had perished of illness before he could come of age, elevating him to spare. Then, when his eldest brother was finally able to lead the family, he had ridden off to war against the Psycho Kingdom and never came back, which meant Philip was now the heir to his family. Normally, he would miss out on this lordship because his eldest brother had a son, but he had not claimed his inheritance before leaving for battle, meaning the position of heir to the family now belonged to him. He felt like the new king was his good luck charm. His streak of good luck had gone through the roof since this new king emerged from his hiding place. Philip knew he had to take advantage of this. He had to figure out a way to get close to this new king, so he could put the plans in motion for the future he envisioned for his family. Once he had become the spare, he was shown how their fief operated. That was when he realized how stupid his father and eldest brother were. All of their plans, trade deals, and taxes were designed to keep their family right where they were. They had no dreams to grow their family name, increase their wealth, or make an impact that resonated through history. Philip had all those plans and more. He knew he needed new contacts, ones his father wouldn't know about until he wanted him to. That was the second biggest reason he was here. He needed to find new merchants, nobles that shared his drive to further their house, and trade deals that went beyond their meager little lands. Some of the underground contacts I've made in the weeks I've been here should come in handy for that. Philip had heard some of the whispers that there were those thinking of starting their own faction apart from the royal faction and noble faction. He liked that idea, and the more contacts he made, the more he realized he should start his own. Philip puffed his chest out a little bit farther. He had only been the heir for a few weeks, and he was already putting his lands in a good position to move up in the world. If he could make a few more contacts, especially a powerful one, he knew his plans would well be on their way to fruition. He had heard that one of the mere lords had already been elevated to Viscount after Viscount Nayland failed to show for this event. Everyone already knew Marquis Raven hadn't come either. No one knew how he was going to be punished for such an insult, but it really got Philip's mind spinning with possibilities. If I can get on the right side of these rulers, perhaps I can take Marquis Raven's place. They elevated a mere lord to a viscount. It should be easy for the great Philip to move up to Marquis. Before Philip could get lost in thoughts of his own greatness, the voice of the master of ceremonies rang through the air and the orchestra ceased playing. Everyone knew it was time to meet the stars of the royal dinner party. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the king and queens of the Psycho Kingdom, Ainz Olgaun, Albedo Olgaun, and Taylar Olgaun. Judging from the murmurs, it seemed as if everyone was ready to meet their new rulers. Some didn't seem too anxious to meet them. It was fairly obvious which nobles had already met them and which ones hadn't. Their Majesties are joined tonight by Ambassador Albedo, as well as head maid Yuri Alpha and head assistant maid Lupus Regina Beta. As the door swung open, it felt as if the air froze around them. The one in the middle, who could only be Ainz Olgaun, was glaring at the master of ceremonies so hard that the man broke out in a cold sweat and pissed himself. The heavy feeling in the air didn't go away until each queen had placed a hand on his forearm. That looked to calm him down almost instantly. He led his queens into the room, one on each arm. No one heard him whisper to them, "I told that jackass to introduce you two first and me last." Philip had no idea where to look. For the first time he could remember, he didn't know what to think or say. More than the 6 people who were announced came through those doors. There were 6 women in maid outfits, but it wasn't hard to pick out which 2 were Yuri Alpha and Lupus Regina Beta. They both had on maid outfits, but they were different than the other 4 women in maid outfits. The 4 maids were insanely beautiful. Philip thought the princess was pretty from earlier, but even this king's maids outshone her beauty. The 2 maids that were named, they were on an even different level above them in beauty. The maid with her black hair in a bun, glasses, and gauntlets. The maid with the red hair and pigtails was obviously another one of the women announced, but nothing like the first one. She had on the sexiest maid outfit Philip had ever seen. The long slit up her leg that showed her stocking every time she stepped was alluring and hard to look away from. It wasn't hard for Philip to pick out Ambassador Albedo. Prince Zanuck hadn't shut up about the women, and Philip finally understood why. To call the woman a goddess wasn't doing her justice. Her golden blonde hair, gold eyes, and beauty were on another level Philip didn't think a woman could possibly possess. She wore a green shoulderless dress with gold accents. The gold embroidery accentuated every curve she had, and she had perfect curves in all the right places. Philip didn't think there could be a more beautiful woman in all the world until he saw the black-haired, yellow-eyed queen on the king's right arm. Her face was such a perfect match to Ambassador Albedo's. Philip thought they were twins. It wasn't hard to figure out they couldn't be to Philip. Ambassador Albedo was obviously human. The jet black wings sprouting from the queen's hip and horns protruding from her temples made it obvious she wasn't human. She was wearing a silver dress, a beautiful ruby necklace, and gold hair ornaments. Her dress hugged her body to perfection, and the obvious baby bump did not detract from her beauty in the slightest. Philip didn't believe there could be a woman more beautiful than the 2 he just took in, but he was proven wrong again when he looked at the woman on the king's left arm. Her white wings obviously marked her as a non-human as well, but she was beauty incarnate. Her wavy, golden blonde hair, piercing emerald green eyes, and perfect figure were straight out of a dream. She took the elegance of the head maid to a level that could only be achieved by this goddess. She wore a blood-red dress that took his breath away. The top was see-through in a lot of parts, and it only covered up what was necessary. It hugged every inch of her from the waist up to show off her perfect figure. Where the dress rested on her hips, the material flowed out and down to the floor. It looked like a rippling lake of blood every time she stepped and the skirts of her dress moved. Philip was already plotting in his mind how to get one of these beauties into his bed. Philip knew that if he could move up in the world, gain more wealth, and possibly get that marquee position, it might be possible to land one of these beauties. He had been planning on getting the princess in his bed after he had gained some notoriety, but now, she wasn't even a thought. Ideally, he would be able to get his hands on both queens, but that could be dangerous for him. If the rumors were even remotely true about the king, the last thing you wanted to do was piss the man off. Philip was sure trying to steal one of his queens would elicit a reaction he would not enjoy. He could always make a play for the queens after he thought of a way to get rid of the king. For now, he had his sights set on someone he might actually be able to obtain. Ambassador Albedo. She was just as beautiful as both queens and would be a fine wife to produce him children. Philip did wonder if there was something wrong with her since the king had obviously not married her. Perhaps he saw what Philip saw, and that is why he didn't. It took a moment for him to realize, but Ambassador Albedo looked the perfect combination of both queens. Her face and figure matched Queen Albedo's perfectly, but she had the coloring and elegant aura of Queen Taylar. Philip would have to bide his time at this party and find the perfect moment to introduce himself to her. He was getting hard just thinking about talking to the woman. He had to take a long drink of his beverage to calm his raging hormones at the sight of these beauties before he got hard in the middle of the dinner party. Philip realized he would have to take this slower than he wished if he stood a chance at gaining this beauty. He would have to make a memorable first impression, grow his wealth, and then he could have such a beauty in his bed. Who knows? Perhaps I'll have all three of them bear me heirs in the future. Once I can get rid of the king, I will have enough land to give out to many children. And I plan on making many children with those beauties. With my luck, I'll have all three of them before I even planned on it. The dinner party had commenced after the rest of the nobles stopped gawking at the new entrance. The dinner party had been back in full swing for quite a while now, but Philip didn't see an opportunity to talk to the ambassador. It wasn't as if she had been talking to everyone in the room, but she hadn't left the high table yet. Unfortunately, it didn't look as if she was going to be moving anytime soon. Philip scanned the room to see what the other nobles were doing at the party. He was trying to judge which ones would be good to approach to form a new faction. He knew he would have to talk to the newly elevated nobles, for the older ones would already be part of either the royal or noble factions. As he slowly scanned the room, he finally saw his opportunity. Ambassador Albedo was standing at the table deciding what to eat, it looked like. The king was dancing with Queen Taylar, and Queen Albedo was talking with Princess Runner. Philip didn't see any of the other servants from the Psycho Kingdom near Ambassador Albedo, and she was standing all alone at the table. If there was ever a time to make his move, this was it. So that is exactly what he did. Ambassador Albedo? She had heard his voice and turned to face him. Her smile made him blush and hard. He would need to get over that if he was to make her his. How can I help you, Lord Philip? Why you know who I am? Philip couldn't believe this goddess knew his name. He had only been the heir for a few weeks. He must have caught her eye as well if she took the time to learn his name. His family wasn't that prominent, but perhaps his deals in the capital so far had already caught her eye. Philip realized that wasn't the case when she replied. Of course, I am an ambassador. It is my job to know the names of all the nobles who would be attending tonight's party. While Philip wasn't thrilled by her answer, one thing did thrill him. As he looked around, trying to figure out what to say next, he noticed almost every set of eyes on him in the room. Being the center of attention thrilled Philip to no end. That's right. Watch me. Watch the great Philip do what none of you fools can. I should not have been surprised. A woman as beautiful and intelligent as you could surely learn all the nobles' names in no time. Philip saw the expression on her face and was confused for a moment. She looked taken aback by his comment. He couldn't rationalize that. Surely she has heard that compliment before? Philip wasn't sure, but it looked as if she never had been told that before. It might be even easier to win her over if no one had ever had the balls to say such a thing to her. Thank you, Lord Philip. Her response was difficult to read to Philip. He wasn't quite sure what the look on her face meant, but this was his chance. He knew he needed to leave a lasting impression, so he did the first thing that came to mind. A beauty such as yourself has surely heard words of such praise before, Ambassador Albedo. Philip thought complimenting her again would get a new reaction out of her, but she just stared at him. He went for broke and laid his hand over the top of hers that was resting on the table. Before he could discern what the new look in her eye meant, Philip suddenly grew more than a foot. He was struggling to breathe, and it felt like his head was about to pop off of his neck. Who the F-U-C-K do you think you are to touch Albedo like that, you fucking worm? Philip's vision was getting blurry, and a blackness was making his vision tunnel, but he could faintly make out Ainz' old gown holding him up by the throat, as if he was a small child. He tried to answer, but only strangled gurgles came out of his mouth. Ainz released the pile of shit before he could pass out. Philip crumbled to the floor like a sack of potatoes and struggled to breathe. He heaved for every drop of oxygen he could and tried to get his bearings. He had obviously fucked up big time, but he was glad he wasn't dead. He had heard what Ainz' old gown is capable of. It was why he was trying to get in the Psycho Kingdom's good graces, but it had backfired spectacularly. He started to get up on his knees to stand only to feel an immense weight on his chest, and he was laying on his back staring up at a very pissed-off Ainz' old gown. Who the fuck is this? Ainz' question came out in a growl so ferocious, everyone in the hall instinctually took a step backward. The wrath coming off the man was tremendous. Luckily for all of them, Princess Renner stood and addressed him. "I apologize, Your Majesty. That is Lord Philip, and he was the third son only recently elevated to the heir. He does not know the proper etiquette for a function such as this, Your Majesty." Ainz looked at the princess, but it barely relaxed him. He wanted to kill this fucker slowly and painfully for putting his hands on Albedo, but he didn't for now. This would be this little shit's only warning, so Ainz bent over, so he was face to face with him, and said, "You are lucky the princess spoke for you. This will be your only warning. Touch her or anyone from my home again, and you will die. You will beg for centuries before I grant your request, then I will turn you into an undead to torture you some more. Do I make myself clear, you little shit?" Philip still couldn't breathe, so he nodded his head as fast as possible. Ainz took his foot off his chest, grabbed Albedo's hand, and he and everyone else from the Psycho Kingdom's party quickly left the party. He certainly would have killed someone if he didn't get out of there. After that incident, the party had broken up not shortly after. The terror of Ainz' old gown's wrath had infected all of them with true fear, and none could get back into party mode. They all glared at Philip for ending such a party as they left. Ainz and company were back in that same room. He had almost killed that Lord Philip. He was close to strangling the man so hard his head would have popped off, but he held back. He really wanted to kill that fucker, but he didn't want to end yet another annoying noble in such a way. Today, though, they would be naming the new reagent. Luckily for everyone, Philip was nowhere in sight today. If Ainz had to guess, one of the great nobles or a member of the royal family had banned him from today. It was probably a good idea. Ainz is almost certain he would kill the man if he saw his face again. Ainz stood at the head of the room ready to address everyone in attendance. As you all know, we are here today to name a new reagent. We have looked at all the potential candidates and finally come to a decision. However, first there is some business we must address. Everyone had looked excited to hear who they named reagent, but his last statement made them pause a moment. They hoped he wasn't talking about the incident from last night. They had never felt such rage and killing intent as when Ainz had Philip up in the air. They certainly didn't want to feel such a thing again. First, Marquis Raven failed to answer the summons to attend this court. Therefore, the first job of the new reagent will be to inform Marquis Raven that he will now be known as Viscount Raven. If he ever fails to answer another summons, he will lose all his lands and titles. Everyone was shocked. They figured Viscount Raven would be punished, but they never envisioned something like this. A few of them got a greedy look in their eyes, hoping they could take his position soon. Second, Viscount Naylan also did not show for the audience. Therefore, he has been stripped of his titles and lands. Lord Perron has been elevated to Viscount Perron and given his lands. Now, that is all I have for you. Since Queen Albedo will be handling most of the items concerning the Riestai's kingdom, she will inform you of your new reagent. Ainz stepped away from the head of the room, and Albedo took his place. Even after seeing the woman before, her beauty still made most of their minds go blank. Even obviously heavily pregnant with child, she was a vision none could look away from. Thank you, my king. After talking to a number of you, we have decided that there is only one person truly qualified to see this land prosper once more and fulfill our vision for this country. So, without further ado, may I introduce the new reagent of the Riestai's kingdom, Queen Reagent Runner Taylar Chardilon Ryle Vazelf. Everyone was stunned. No one thought the princess would be the one named reagent. Not a single person clapped as Renner made it to the front and bowed before Albedo. It wasn't until she started speaking that they were drawn out of their stupor. Thank you, your majesties. I am humbled by your appointment and promise to work hard to see your vision fulfilled and this land prospers once more. With the help of the nobles, I know we can make your vision come true. I will not disappoint you in making me Queen Reagent. Queen Reagent Renner had said nothing more and only stayed on the platform long enough to receive the clapping of those in attendance before departing the head of the room. The moment they were done, the party from the Psycho Kingdom and the new Queen Reagent headed to the town square to address the people of the Riestai's kingdom. Once the doors closed behind them, the whole party teleported just outside the town square. The turnout was tremendous. None of them had expected so many to show up considering the rumors most of them would have heard about them. Perhaps having Blue Rose spread the word along with others had made an impact. The murmur of the crowd died down and went completely silent as Ainz made his way onto the makeshift platform. None of the common people had ever seen a being such as Ainz. They could tell some of the rumors were true about how fearsome he was. The aura the king gave off was downright terrifying, but he certainly didn't look like a monster. Ainz could tell most of them were still nervous and a little fearful. He was pleased to see some of them simply looked curious. If they could win over this crowd, this country will be much easier to handle in the future. Thank you all for coming today. I am the exalted king of the Psycho Kingdom, Ainz Olgown. Ainz voiced boomed over the square. We have come to assure you that under our rule, you shall feel safe and always be protected. The people of Irantal have accepted our rule, and now, the city prospers more than it ever has. Ainz was skirting the line saying that. They were indeed trading, building, and inventing more than ever before, but the economy was only doing marginally better. Ainz knew once they started trading with the lizard men, toad men, catfolk, and all the other races already under their rule, it would increase tenfold, and certainly be true then. The first thing that will be hard for most of you, if not all, to get used to will be the ones seeing over your daily protection. They are terrifying to behold, especially to a human, but they will never get violent unless defending themselves or someone else from a crime being perpetrated on them. As such, I wish for all of you to see one together, so that when you see them patrolling the streets with their human counterparts, you will be more at ease with them. Ainz motions toward one of the streets off to the side and slightly behind him. Everyone hears the footsteps the moment he does, and most start shaking uncontrollably. As the Death Knight rounds the corner, it is hard for them not to break out into a sprint in the other direction. They have been patrolling the streets of Irantal since we took over, and crime has all but disappeared. They have never hurt an innocent person, and will never do so, as all of them are under our control. If you are ever in trouble, just tell the Death Knight what is going on and follow him. They cannot speak, but understand what you say to a certain degree. This one will stay, so you may get used to him, but now we are on to the second reason we are here. Ainz knows the next part will be the hardest for them to get over. It is why he summoned the Death Knight first to help keep their hatred down. It is better they are afraid than angry. What did that one queen say? Ah, yes. Let it be fear. I know a lot of you will find it very hard to believe we have your safety in mind after I killed so many of your husbands, sons, uncles, etc. I will not lie to you. I killed them. However, I did not want to. I took every step to prevent such a battle from happening, but your nobles cared more for their pride than your well-being. All the proposals we offered were to protect villagers the crown could not. Ainz let them think of that for a moment before he continued. We only made ourselves known to save the village of Karn on the outskirts of Irantal. Enemy soldiers were raping, murdering, and pillaging their way across your lands, and no one was stopping them. My queens and I could not sit idly by and watch even if it did not concern us. Yep, we care. Or, at least I want you to think that. I don't really feel anything for the human race anymore. There are very few not from Nazareth that I care what happens to them now. This entire continent used to be ours. We simply asked for a small piece of 2 kingdoms to protect since neither crown could do it. We were refused, and when it came time to bargain a final time, those 2 countries showed up with massive armies to greet us. Unfortunately, your loved ones had to pay for the choices of a few nobles. Now that your entire country has our protection, we shall use that might to protect all of you as our citizens. Ainz gets a lot of reactions to that. Some are clapping, some are cheering, and some are crying. He isn't sure why that is the case, but they aren't running, so he assumes it is good. Now that he is done, time to turn it over. We will make sure all of you may flourish in the new world. Now, one of my queens will introduce you to the new reagent. Ainz steps to the side a bit and lets Albedo take the stage. When Albedo steps into view, the gasps are so sharp it can be heard all around the city. There is another round when Taylar steps up behind her, but she stays back near Ainz while Albedo continues to the front. People of the Riestai's kingdom, I am the exalted queen of the Psycho kingdom, Albedo Olgaun. I shall be the one working closely with your new reagent to see your lands prosper as they never have. Not just for the nobles of this country, but for you. For too long you have had the nobles of this country step all over you. Albedo pauses to let those words sink in. She can tell she already has most of them hooked. Now it is time to get all of them. When their plans come to fruition easily to improve their lives, the people will never turn on them. But we will never allow that to happen again. There will be a chance for everyone to succeed. It will not matter your birth, your home, your parents, or your name. Everyone from the highest of the high to the lowest of the low will shine in our kingdom, and they will all be held to the same standard. Albedo pauses for a moment. She never realized how valuable the pause was until Ainz and Taylar had pointed it out. Letting her words settle in their minds with a pause, but then continuing before they could make a decision was immensely helpful in manipulating them to your side. Your birth, station, rank, or position will not save you from the laws of the Psycho Kingdom. If a great noble steals, he or she will receive the same punishment as an orphan on the street would receive. Slavery is a thing of the past. Any who practice it shall meet the harshest punishment possible for their crimes. At that pause, most of the crowd took a step back. The look on all the faces on stage was terrifying for a moment. It looked as though slavery was the worst thing these divine beings could think of. All of them took 2 steps forward to listen more. While most of your nobles have only used and abused you, there are a select few of them who have always tried to do what is best for you. We know we have found a few of the good nobles of this kingdom, and the best of them we have chosen as your new reagent. Albedo steps to the side slightly and motions behind her. It is my privilege to introduce all of you to the Queen Reagent of the Riestai's kingdom, Renner Thier Chardilon Ryle Vazelf. As Renner makes her way onto the stage, the entire town square is silent. All of them know of Princess Renner and are completely stunned she will now lead them. They all knew her love for the common people. The stunned silence quickly turned to elation when someone yelled out, "It's the Golden Princess." That was all it took for the entire square to erupt into applause. Cheers, screams of Golden Princess, and even crying were done by some or all of the people in the square. It took quite a while for them to calm down and Renner to address them. My people, I am humbled to be bestowed with the wonderful opportunity to finally give all of you the voice you deserve. I opposed going against their majesties as much as I could, but alas, being the third born and a woman does not make your opinion respected by many even as a princess. That's right, insects. Eat out of the palm of my hand, like you imbeciles always will. I'll play any part one need to finally have my climb. Their majesties have seen past all of that, though, and wish the same vision I do for the future of the Riestai's kingdom. Together, we shall all prosper and be free of oppression. You shall always have a voice to be heard as long as I am responsible for your safety and well-being. Renner can see that everyone is captivated by her already. She knew the reason, of course, but never could use such a manipulation trick because she could not make people feel that wide a range of emotions herself. After this, she is sure the common people would beg for her to rule over them forever. The starving, poor, and forgotten were easy to sway. We already have several orphanages for the children, but soon there will be more. Also, we will soon open an office for everyone to come to when they seek employment. We will do everything we can to make sure you have a roof over your head and food to eat. Renner slightly bows to the crowd, and the gasps are as loud as when Taylar and Albedo took the stage. None can believe the Golden Princess, now Queen Regent, was bowing to commoners. Renner got exactly the reaction she wanted as she stood straight once more. I thank you for your love and support. You will always be my people, and I will do everything to make all of you happy. I will try not to disappoint any of you. Renner turned to leave, and the crowd went crazy again. She walked over toward the king and queens, and they left the stage. They didn't go far, simply to meet up with everyone from Nazarick and say goodbye to the new Queen Regent. The applause didn't die down as they disappeared, and it only took a moment to say goodbye. Before they could leave, Ainz sensed his Death Knight notices someone approaching, who pushed their way through the crowd. As Ainz turned to look, Taylar and Albedo noticed him looking and did as well. None were surprised to see Blue Rose come through the crowd and cautiously approach near the Death Knight. Ainz silently ordered him to step off to the side, and he did. Taylar didn't wait long to address them. Blue Rose, good to see you. I see you spread the word. You got us quite the turnout. Why, Your Majesty? We aren't responsible for all these people. Locus looked dismayed at taking credit for this. They indeed told some people, but not nearly this many. They had never seen this many people in one place at a single time in all their lives. Well, you spread the word, so you had a part in it. Is there something I can do for you ladies? Taylar knew damn well why they were here, but wanted to let them tell her anyway. It always works best when you let people think they made their decision on their own. Locus decided to show Taylar instead as all of Blue Rose took a knee and bowed to the monarchs. We wish to accept your offer, Your Majesties. We would be honored to call Karn our new home if you would have us. Rise. Blue Rose rises. I am glad you have come to such a decision, Lady Locus and the rest of Blue Rose. Also, Queen Regent Renner has told us you have been helping her in the past and good friends. I am sure she would like to still hear your counsel on the occasions she has the time, so you will not need to say goodbye to this city forever. Everyone in Blue Rose looked relieved, other than Evil Eye. No matter how good your vision, you can't see through a mask. Renner smiled at them as well to make them feel even more at ease. I wonder if I was this easy to manipulate as a human? Taylar has to admit it is probably true. All the shit she did in Japan that she didn't want to do would make that pretty apparent. We are headed back home, but we will send a carriage from the royal palace so you may move all your things. There is no rush, spend a few days packing. Also, spend some time with the new Queen Regent. Give her your insights before departing for now. We will see you when you arrive in Karn to introduce you to some people. Blue Rose bows again, and when they all look up, the last one from Nazarick was stepping into a whirling purple and black vortex before it disappeared from sight. They all had a look of surprise except Renner. Soon, they started chatting with Renner about the future and the possibilities it held.
That's it for today. Remember to show your support to the creator of this story if you enjoyed it. If you would like more parts of the story to be uploaded, leave a comment and subscribe to get notified when the story continues. Bye-bye for now, and I hope that you all have a wonderful rest of your day.